Hi guys, it's Sherry. This is part 2 to the video of us creating the frog. So today we're going to paint it and do all the details. So you can see all the little details on this little guy, and we're going to do something similar to this one. The paints that I use are these ones. They're a little expensive, but I really like these ones. I got them off of Amazon. So I'm using the snake scale, pure red. We got yellow, we got black, and then we got a darker green, okay? So first, I'm gonna do the lighter green, and this is the easiest part. We're just going to make a mess, so to speak. I'm going to paint the whole thing. It's going to need a couple coats, so nothing has to be pretty right now. It doesn't matter if you get the stone, because we're going to clean that all up later. Just make sure you're getting everything covered. The first coat is always the messiest and not so pretty. I like this paint because it dries fairly quick. And it just, I don't know, I just like the way that it lays and looks. Before, right after I baked it, I actually sanded down a few areas, so you could do that as well if you feel like you have some rough edges. I chose to do in between the feet here. I sanded that down a little bit, and underneath I wanted to buff it a little bit to make it smoother. Make sure you get in between every little area. And you can see the head is already dry, so we could start on the second. The second layer I'm going to do a little bit thicker. I'm going to make sure I get every little area that I may have forgot. And remember, right now, nothing has to be perfect yet. I always found that this part of creating anything that I make is always the funnest, because it really brings everything to life. I love to paint all my little creatures. Some people just use different color clay so they don't have to paint, but I'm more into the painting and doing all the little details. Just make sure you got all the little areas on top. The bottom I'm going to do a different color, so I'm not too concerned. I just want to do one little coat to cover up the black, because black is always harder to cover up. Alright, I'm going to let that fully dry, and then we'll take notice if there's anything that we may have missed. And then once that dries, I'll be back and we could do the next one. Okay, so now my frog is dry, and you're going to look over, just make sure that you don't have no dark black peeking through anywhere. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just pretty good. See right here, I noticed I missed just a tad bit. So I'm going to grab that. Some people will do more than 2 coats. I don't find it necessary because I'm going to cover it up with little dots everywhere. So just grab your little areas. Okay. I think I got all my little areas covered. Let me get right inside that eye again. All right, clean your brush and just wipe it with a towel so it's not soaking wet. Now we're going to do the underbelly. I decided to do red. Now when you're doing the red, make sure you're not hitting the top. We just want to stay on the underneath for now. When I go around the edges, I just go a little slower because I don't want to get anything on the front of it yet. Let me move this over so you can see a little better. See, I got a little red there, but I'm going to cover that up with some green then. Okay. Just remember, take your time, have a little patience when it comes to this, and your end results, you will be very pleased. I'm going to change my brush to a smaller one for a minute and get a tiny, so I could get really into here without touching everything. Okay, let that dry for a moment. I'm going to wash out my first brush, dry it a little bit. Oops. And we're going to do 2 coats of this red too to make sure that it looks nice. Now the second coat, like I said, I always do a little bit thicker. Okay, so we're going to let this dry completely, and then we can see what we need to fix and what needs to go next. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I let this dry and I'm looking over it and it looks fairly good to me. So now we're going to clean up all these little edges that we went over. So get a tiny brush and just clean up all your little edges. There we go. Remember to look in between the toes too, because sometimes you'll get a little bit of red peeping through there. And just go slow and take your time. Make sure wherever you're doing this you have good light, because you want to be able to see all the fine detail that you're going to be doing here so you don't miss anything. Sometimes if you're doing it in a darker room, you think you got everything, and then you go into a lighter room, and all of a sudden you see all these things that you missed. So having an extra little light helps tremendously and saves you a lot of time. Okay. Now, I noticed I got a little green there, so I'm gonna put a little block there. That's a bubble. Okay, so let's let this dry, which is almost completely done already, and then we'll start on the front again. Okay, so our next step is going to be the eyes. You see, we have black and red, so we're actually going to start with the black first. Let me shake that first. Okay. Make sure you have a very tiny brush for this as well. Let's see. I'm going to use this one. And get that nice and coated. There we go. And do the whole eyeball. I'm not too worried about getting the very, very edge on the top or the bottom because we're actually going to be doing that red. So I'm just kind of close, making sure I have a nice layer on because I like it to only have to be done once. All right, now I'm going to let that dry for a moment, clean my brush. Okay. While that's all drying, my next step is going to be to get my red again. Just a little bit, because all these little bumps here, we're going to do red. And you're going to want to make sure it's nice and thick on your brush again, because we only want to have to do that once. I start out at the top, and then I work my way to the sides, and very slowly so you don't get it on your frog. I'm just checking and making sure I'm getting all my edges. This is where a good light really helps. To make sure you're getting every little area the first time. If you're painting and you ever have shaky hands like I do, I find that if I hold it like this, my hand will shake a lot easier. And if I hold it down onto something like the table, and then I put my pinky up against, it helps support my hand from shaking. Yeah, see, I forgot that little edge there. Okay. Oh, there's something hard there. There we go. I promise you, all this tedious stuff will make it worthwhile. It will look wonderful by the time you're done. Detail really is important, I think. The more detail you could put into a piece, I think it really brings it out. So all this little nitty-gritty stuff of making sure we're doing multiple colors and making sure we get all the little edges, it really does make a huge difference. At least to my eye it does. Now see, if I just did the top, hold on, let me show you. Okay, so say I just did the top, and you can see all the green around the edge, and it just doesn't look as pretty to me. So I want to make sure I'm getting all the edge. I always felt like if I was going to make something and put the time and energy and money into it, I want to make sure that I put as much detail into something to really make it worth my time and effort. Plus, I find stuff like this very relaxing for me. Okay, I think we are on the last one here. Okay. All right, so now I'm going back to my black. You just need a tiny dot. And I am going to fill in all these little holes. Okay, so let that dry. Okay. My eyes look like they're drying. Okay. So I'm going to get my brush again. You wet it just a little bit so it gets a nice tip on it. I feel like I have more control over it. Okay. So now, very carefully, we're just going to do the top and bottom. One line over, one line that way. Okay. Okay. All right. Let that dry, and then we're going to clean up the little areas that we may have gotten on the green. I think I'm going to do, because I did a heart, I think I'm going to do the outline red, just because I think it'll look pretty. So that's what I'm going to do. You do not have to do this. I did not do it with this one. I just decided last minute that's what I'm going to do. The nice thing about these frogs is you could really do any color that you desire. You don't have to do exactly the same thing that I'm doing. You can make it your own personal piece. You do not have to do a heart. You can do yellow underneath if you want. Whatever color, make it yours. Be creative. Have fun. You always say have fun, because I think that's the most important. Okay, make sure you got all your edges again. You can clean up anything that you may make a mistake on, because we have not done the final steps yet. I'm actually going to do the top part here too, because I know I have a tiny little edge over that stone that's in there. All right. Yeah. All right, let that all dry. Now, we're going to get our green out again. And we're going to clean up any edges that we may have made a mess on. So using my very, very tiny brush, I'm going to clean up the eyes. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right, I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to clean up the edges of this heart. That's not good enough anymore. All right. So now we're going to do our dark green. See all those little dots? That's what we're going to add on. That was probably way too much. So we just want to get the tip. And then you're just going to take this and just do little dots all over. All different sizes, little, big. I'm going to do different size big ones. Okay, now I'm going to do smaller ones. All right, the very edges I'm going to leave till the top part dry so I don't go messing any of that up. Remember, do different size dots. You want some really tiny ones, some bigger ones, some medium ones. Any edges that I would have to pick up to get properly, I'm leaving for last. When you're doing this, try not to stay in like a pattern. You want to kind of go all over. Because if you do a pattern, it's going to look a little too uniform. Okay. I'm going to let that dry for about 5 minutes, and then I will pick it up and see what else we need to do there. Okay, so I let this dry. Now you can see all the edges that I did not get. So I'm going to do my edges. Don't get impatient with this part, because sometimes if you get impatient, you make pieces that start looking sloppy, and you don't want to spend all that time on your piece and then at the very end have it look sloppy. So have patience. Just take your time on this. I promise it will be worth it. Remember, do different size dots. Make sure they look like dots, and I think I got all my little areas that I want to get. I did notice as I was going through, there's a little red on one of the toes that I want to fix. Right there. Okay. If you do make a area that you don't like, you could really just go over it with your regular first paint, the green, and then just redo it. There we go. But I'm not, oops, happy with this area here. It's too much with the little ones all over. So I'm going to cover that up. And then redo it. There we go. I like that better. Okay. So now we're going to get our yellow. And we're going to dry brush just some little highlights. We do not need much of that. This is the brush I'm going to use. I just want very little on my brush to start. Oops. And I'm going to highlight the toes. Nope, let's see, that's too much. There we go. We're just dabbing the toes. Just giving it a little bit. Highlight the leg on the bottom. I'm going to do a little on the top. Get the top shoulder. I'm going to highlight the top of his eyes. Okay. Maybe a little bit there. Okay. Alrighty. So now look over it. See if there's anything that you want to add. Anything that you may have missed. I'm liking the way he looks. So my next step is going to clean up the stones. So I'm going to get, where are you? Alright, I don't know what this tool is called, but I have this. And I'm just lightly, let me get rid of this so I don't get no more. I'm lightly going to scrape away the edges here. You don't have to push hard because everything comes off these stones very easily. Because you don't want to scratch your stone, so you just want to do it lightly. Okay. Alright, just grab a baby wipe and clean up the stone. We don't have to get perfect because we're going to do this again then. We just want to be able to see most of it there. Okay, now I have this gloss glaze that I'm going to use, and this is going to really make the frog pop. I'm just getting a regular old brush and I am going to glaze him. This dries fairly quick. That's why I like this one best. I'm impatient when it comes to drying, so I want to use anything that dries quickly. Make sure you're getting every edge on this one. All right, let's let that dry and then we could do the bottom half. Okay, so my piece is dry. Now I'm going to do the back side. If you feel like you got too much gloss in one area, take a dry brush and just blend it, and that'll help get any big globs that you may have there. Okay, so now let's let that dry for a few minutes. All right, and now that is dry, so you can see how shiny it is, and we're going to clean up the very edges because now I got some gloss here and I still have a little bit of paint in here. So I have this that looks like a needle. That's what I use to get the very, very edge. Okay. Once you are satisfied with everything, then you're done. So here is our finished frog. I hope you have fun making this, and please let me know in the comments what you think and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you. See you next time, guys. Bye.